Always forget to turn off that banner. Dang it. Dang it. How's everybody tonight? I had an interesting day today. I actually took the day off from work and I did an interview today and I didn't want to do it during company hours. So that's why I kind of took the day off and I just worked on other podcast stuff. So I was on BS with Todd today. Did you see it? Did you watch it? Huh? Did Chuck do good? Let me know in the comments if you watched it. So, anyways, we always start off every show with, what are you drinking? It's either moonshine or it's water. Let's see. Water. Shotzi, let me guess. Hold on, don't tell me. 2-liter Diet Dr. Pepper. What? George, you're drinking water, right? Right? Yeah, see? Do I know my audience or do I know my audience? So, what all have you guys been doing this week? Anything interesting? Any questions that you want me to answer this week? Oh, the acronym challenge. That's what I meant to do. That's when you said do a pre-show. I was actually making the acronym challenge. George, if you don't get this one, I'm going to have to come down to Plain City and spank you. So here is this week's acronym challenge. SWR. SWR. What does that mean? Put the answer in the chat box. What does SWR mean? I'll give you a couple seconds to answer that. Doesn't necessarily have to do with cabling. I did a frequency acronym challenge just about 2 weeks ago. For those who don't know, I do a daily acronym challenge, 8-10 every morning. Put up an acronym for people to find. Nobody wants to even take a guess what SWR means? Really? Even if you have to make it up. Let's see. Come on. What does SWR mean? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's see. Oh, somebody answered. It stands for wave radius. But what's the S stand for? Standing wave ratio. Standing wave ratio. What is standing wave ratio? What does that mean? It's actually how you measure how efficient an antenna is. So it could apply to us because we do digital antenna systems, DAS stuff and stuff like that. So it could apply to us as well. It's just the way that you measure that. So that's the acronym challenge for today. Hopefully you got that. If not, okay, well, no big deal. Any questions for this week before I go into the submitted questions? Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and go into the submitted questions. As always, safety is number one. So we got to put on our appropriate PPE so that no injuries are sustained while answering these questions. Question number one comes from Connecticut. It says, Chuck, I have a bundle of UTP Cat5e cable, and I have some Cat6a cable that I have to pull for HDMI signal extension. Can I put that Cat6a cable in the same bundle as Cat5e? If they're both UTP, the answer is no. If the Cat6a is shielded, then the answer is yes. And the reason for that, when I say shielded, it's got to be FUTP or SFTP, okay? Because that full shield keeps the EMI from getting into the other cables. By the way, because you mentioned HDMI signal extension products, HDMI is very sensitive to alien crosstalk. Alien crosstalk, just as a refresher, is how much one cable interferes with another cable as they go down the cable pathway. That's alien crosstalk, in case you didn't know that, because we do have some people in here who may not have actually sat in that class before. So HDMI is very susceptible to alien crosstalk. So you want to, if can, put it in a different bundle or put it down a different route. That way you save yourself from any potential issues. Boom, there we go. Put your questions in the chat box. I'm answering questions live. I'll give you guys a couple seconds, and then if not, I will type in another one. Did another interesting interview today. Have you noticed there was no show published on Monday? What? Chuck's mom came to town. So say hi, Mrs. RCDD. She's right there. She can hear you. Everybody says hi, Mom. She says hi too. So I did an interview with Tim Coleman. Tim Coleman's a RCDD and a PE. Has a he does a lot of, he authors a lot of interesting articles, and I just read one of them today. Is AV cabling subjected to the code book? Is AV cable subjected to the code book? Save you from reading that article, although it's an interesting article. I do suggest you read it. Just look up Tim Coleman, Kuhlman, on LinkedIn. You'll find him. Look up that article if you want to read it. You should always put the cable in per the code book. Always, 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 always. Question number 2, coming from California, says, Chuck, I have conduit that the electricians did not leave pull string, and my fish tape is not long enough. How can I get some string inside this conduit? If you contracted the electrician to put in the conduit, call them. Say, come back out here. Your job's not done, because they got to ream it, put a bushing on for protection, and install a pull string, minimum 200-pound pulling tension. If it's an old conduit that was installed before and you don't know who installed it, find out how long it is. Most fish tapes are 50 feet or 100 feet in length, but they do make longer ones. They're a little harder to operate just because they get kind of jammed up inside of the round thing sometimes. But you don't necessarily have to fish it with a fish tape. You can do what's called blow the conduit. So Greenlee makes this tool. It's called a I actually had to look it up because we used to call it a conduit blower, but it's called I know I wrote it down. There it is. A portable blower power fishing system. Portable blower power fishing system. So it comes with a device that creates an airflow. Comes with these plugs in different sizes that fit different size conduits. You put the plug inside the conduit. There's a little hook on the end of it. You put your pull string on it, and then you put the Greenlee tool to the end of that, seal it off, turn it on. It pushes air into it, and that pushes that plug all the way through the conduit. I have been known from time to time, because that tool is $1,000, by the way, in case you don't know that. I have been known from time to time to use a shop vac. What? Yes. So you take the exhaust port on the shop vac and you plug it into the conduit, get a grommet or something to tape it up. Take a plastic bag or something and make it into a ball. Make sure it's just barely fits into the conduit. Put a piece of tape, a piece of pull string to that. Grommet, seal it off, and you can use a shop vac to do that. Shop vacs are way cheaper than that Greenlee tool. Pro tip number 1, if you're doing any kind of conduit blowing, on the other side, whoever's watching for it to come out, don't put your face in front of the conduit, okay? Because as that plug is blowing down the conduit, eventually it's going to be pushing all the dust, all the dirt, all the construction debris in front of it. And if you're standing right in front of the conduit, you could get an eye injury. I did a project at Fort Detrick, Maryland. Oh, geez, 30 years ago. We were doing some cable, outside plant cable between a couple of the buildings. And I remembered specifically because one of the buildings that we were pulling the cable from was actually was their infectious control building. And that's where they were testing things on animals. And I remember they brought out this cart, and this cart had like 3 cages per row, and it had 3 rows. So there was 9 monkeys on this thing in various states of health. And I thought, well, that's pretty sad. Anyways, I digress. So we were putting conduit through the, pulling cable through the conduit, and we were in the maintenance holes, not the manholes, the maintenance holes. Unbeknownst to us, we weren't told, somebody from the base had contracted somebody to blow all the water out of the conduits. So we were in one of the maintenance holes. Luckily, it wasn't me. It was somebody else. And also we hear this bloop, 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 and all of a sudden, whoosh, the guy just got soaked from head to toe. So never look into a conduit if you're actively blowing a plug through it, okay? Or, and also make sure you wear appropriate PPE when you're inside of that, right? So that's why you handle that, right? And there was another thing I wanted to tell you about that, but I can't remember. Oh, the grommet thing. So never look into that conduit. So the next question, again, put your questions in the comments. Okay, I have 6 questions that people submitted tonight. Carlo, good to see you, buddy. Carlo was actually another alumni from the interview on the Let's Talk Cabling podcast. So this question comes from Georgia, and this question was, Chuck, what is RS-232? How and where would I use it? RS-232 is not a cable. RS-232 is a standard. It actually used to be the TIA RS-232 standard, and it just basically it tells how to do transmit and receive for things like video, audio, projectors, stuff like that. A lot of your HDMI signal extension products have an RS-232 component to them, so you can send not only the audio and the video across that cable, but you can also typically send an RS-232 channel. And what does that mean? That means like when you've got your remote and you take that remote and you hit the volume up and the volume down, your remote is communicating to your TV via RS-232. So CTPT2N. Put your question in the chat box. He asked me if I can answer a question about fiber cables. I will give it a shot. So type your question in there. So it's the RS-232 standard, though, it says it's limited to 50 feet. 50 feet. But Chuck, I know there's a HDMI signal extension product that goes up to 328 feet. Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Because you're changing that RS-232 signal into an Ethernet signal, which can go to the maximum of 90 meters or 295 feet. That's why you can get past that 50 feet for that RS-232. There are other ones. There's an RS-430 something. I can't remember off the top of my head, and there's even another one after that. But RS-232 is the most common one. And like I said, it was used a lot in the 90s, in the late 80s for printers. We used to do a lot of projects for like law firms where they would put the computer here, but they want the keyboard over there. So we'd run RS-232 cables through the walls, and it was a multi-stranded conductor cabling, multi-stranded conductor, not a 25 pair cable. So it was like a 12 and a half pair cable, and it had stranded conduction inside of it. And there were certain pinouts, and you had to know the right pinout for the equipment. This is again before all the standards. So you had to be at a book. You had to look up the device. Okay, that's a Hewlett Packard printer. Okay, and then I got a pinout. It'll give you pins. It'll have like on one side 1 through 25 and 1 through 25 on the other side. It would say 1 to 1, 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 2, and so on and so forth. And it'll also tell you what those pins were assigned. So one was a ground, one was transmit, one was receive, one was notice to send, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So again, you don't come across it too often now because everything's going VoIP, going internet protocol kind of stuff. So you don't come across them too often nowadays. Okay. So let's look at question number 4. This one's coming in from St. Louis. And it says, Chuck, I recently hurt my back on the job and I am out of work for a minimum of 3 months. Can you tell other technicians how not to get a hurt back like me? Okay, that's pretty simple. So, number 1, when you pick up something, don't bend over to pick it up. Okay, bend down, grab a hold of it, use your legs. Your thighs are the strongest muscles you have in your body. So use your legs to pick up stuff. Before you pick it up, though, you really want to, let's say, for example, I got a heavy box that came in UPS. I'm sitting here in my office, right? And I want to take it out to the shop out where the barn is. So I would actually walk the path first to make sure there's no obstructions, like German Shepherd toys, things on the floor, because once I got that heavy object, I don't want to trip on something, right? So you want to make sure that your path is clear. And so then you're going to go back to your object, your box. You're going to bend down, grab a hold of it, pick it up with your legs, and then you're going to walk with it. When you walk with it, if you make a turn, Don't turn your waist. Ask my wife that one. Yeah, don't turn your waist, right? Use your feet to turn. She was sitting in the chair a couple days ago, about 3-4 days ago, literally sitting in the chair. She turned to the left to yell at the 5-month-old German Shepherd puppy, and she threw it. So it can happen to anybody, anytime, anywhere. So turn with your legs, not your hips, right? Also, if possible, don't pick up anything heavier than 55 pounds by yourself. If it's more than 55 pounds, get help. So that's when I really, really, really kind of miss having the grandboys around, because I can always get them to help me, right? So that always miss having them around. Okay, any questions in the chat box? No questions in the chat box. Oh, take another sip. Remember, answer the first question. What are you drinking tonight? What are you drinking? Chuck's drinking water again. Or is it moonshine? Don't know. We'll see if Chuck starts slurring his words. Question number 5. And the final question, unless somebody asks questions in the chat box, says this question comes from Texas, and it says, Chuck, I'm an assistant estimator in the Austin office working on my first bid. The customer wants Cat 6 cable, but in the RFP is a request for proposal, right? Request for proposal. It says that I got to test with level 2E tester, level 2E/5E testing. How do I bid this? Okay. You just got hit by or bitten by the infamous copy and paste bug. What do I mean by that? A lot of customers, a lot of spec engineers, a lot of consultants who are writing the request for proposal. The request for proposal is a formal document that a customer puts out to cable contractors. They read the document so that they know that they want that, so they can put a price to it. That's what a request for proposal is. Some people are lazy, and they will pull up a previous document, they'll copy and paste, and then they'll go back and edit it. And sometimes they copy and paste the wrong thing. Sometimes they copy and paste and forget to go back and fix it. So probably what happened was that customer copy and pasted another proposal that was for Cat 5e, and they forgot to change it. Now, what would I do? Again, you said you're an assistant estimator. Always verify this with your estimator that you're working with before you do this kind of stuff. So what I would probably do is I would probably send a formal RFI, request for information, especially if I'm bidding against other people, right? Some people might call it a request for interpretation as well, but I've heard request for information. What are we doing here? So the RFI, when you send that back to the customer, right, there's a specific format for them, right? And I'm not going to go into that in today's show because it's a whole deal. But anyways, in that RFI document, you'll say on page whatever of the RFP, it states that we got to be Cat 6 cable. And such page in the RFP, it says that you want to use level 2E tester for 5E cabling. There is no 5E cabling. Can you please clarify this? Most likely what will happen is the customer will kick that back to the consultant, and the consultant's going to go, oh, oops, we copy and paste there. And then they'll fix it and say, no, we really want to have a level 3 test. Okay. So level 2E test, level 3, level 4, and 2G. Those are all for specific cabling. So a level 2E tester is for category 5E cable. As if you've ever sat in my previous episodes, you learned that Cat 5E is 100 megahertz. You want to learn what a megahertz is and how that operates, go back and watch the old podcast. They're there, right? Cat 6 is 250 megahertz. Cat 3 is 16 megahertz. Cat 6A is 500 megahertz, and Cat 8 is 2000 megahertz. So why is this important? Because they say they want a 2E tester. A 2E tester only tests up to 100 megahertz. That's all the further it can go up. But remember, the Cat 6A goes all the way to 250. You're not measuring from frequency 101 to frequency 250. So those testers are not forwards compatible. They're not forwards compatible. Now, you could certainly use a 2G tester to certify Cat 5e job. They are backwards compatible, but they're not forwards compatible. But again, so make sure that you send that out, that formal question out to the customer. And another reason you want to do that, especially if you're in a competitive bid environment, is because you want to make sure that everybody is bidding the project the exact same way. That way, when the customer's comparing the price, they're comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. Okay. Did a project one time where it was for an existing customer, and we've been working for them for about 4 or 5 years. We knew how all the different types of work area outlets they put in. We knew what kind of cables. We knew the colors. We knew the part numbers. And so we were bidding straight to them. Although all of a sudden somebody said from higher up in the company, well, you got to put these out for a bid. So that way we get the lowest price. I'm like, no, we want to use this company because they can do it right. And they know it's got to go out to a competitive bid. So they put it out for competitive bid. Well, they didn't know how to do that. So they hired a consultant. Well, the consultant did exactly that. They did a copy paste error. And then they sent it out. And then we read through the document, and we quickly identified that's not what the customer wants. Okay. We identified that pretty quickly. So we sent an RFI to the customer and said, please clarify this. Right. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to make sure that, because what happens is when a customer responds back to an RFI, they don't just send the answer to you. They send it to all of the bidders. That way everybody gets the same information. Again, we wanted to make sure that everybody was operating on the same level. So actually, kind of interesting story. What happened was when it came back from that, the customer, the consultant, not the customer, the consultant didn't want to admit that they had egg on their face. So they come back and just said, no, bid it exactly as it's written. We're like, that's not what the customer wants. And he says, I don't care. Bid it as it's written. So, okay. So we priced it exactly as it was written. And we said, here's the price for that job. Let's say this price was $10,000, right? That was a formal response to the bid. And then we sat down and said, option A, here's the price for doing it the way they really want to do it, right? Because we knew how they wanted to do it because it was a copy and paste error by the consultant. We didn't win that job. I guess we ticked off the consultant and he just said, I'm not picking them people. So, So the 3 things that you always want to have to be successful in any role that you play within this company, within the communications industry, is documentation. Documentation and documentation. So always have documentation, always have backups for it. That way, if you do get awarded a project and it comes back, push comes to shove, you can actually say, well, look, we requested this information early on, and here's your response to that. So remember, the first part of documentation is getting it. The second part of documentation is keeping it. So that way, when it rains, you have that umbrella to protect you from getting wet, if you know what I mean. Okay, that was the last question I had that was sent in ahead of time. We have 6 minutes. 6 minutes. That's an eternity when you don't have any questions. Let me see. Still waiting for that one question from C2P2N. C2P2N. He said he had a question about fiber cabling. Shotzi, you got any questions? George, do you have any questions? Carlo, do you have any questions? Those are the only people who commented so far. So I'll give you guys a minute or so to answer that. So while we're doing that, next week's show. I got another interesting interview coming up for next week's show. Next week's show, I'm interviewing a salesperson from America Insultech. America Insultech. They probably wonder, why am I doing that? I'm doing that because this person is brand spanking new to the industry and they're a female. And I want to get that perspective. I want to get this perspective of somebody brand new to the industry and a female perspective, because our industry is full of old white guys, and we need to fix that. We need to get young people in this industry. We need to get women and more. We need to get more women in the industry. We've gotten more women over the last couple of decades. We're getting better at it, but we need more. So that's going to be interesting. And then after that, I got another interesting interview lined up with Chris Hobbs at Big C. Just trying to formalize a date there so we can actually have that interview. And we're going to talk about the Big C training program. So got lots of great interviews and stuff slated for the podcast. So make sure you continue to listen and make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell button if you're watching it on YouTube. And also make sure that if you're listening to that podcast on YouTube, make sure that you give us a 5-star rating. And if you can't give us a 5-star rating, shoot me an email and tell me how I can make sure that you have a 5-star rating. So there you go. The answer to your question, George, no, it's still here. I got to make that video still. So George asked me, still have that butt set. So yes, I do. I still have it here. And I promised Low Voltage Nation I would make them a video on how to use it. So any questions? We got 3 minutes left before we shut down the after hours live session with questions from your favorite RCDD. Ooh, I just dropped it. Dang it. Not the phone, something else. My headsets. Okay, any other questions? I don't see any there. We'll give you a few more seconds. All righty. Well, then we're just going to go ahead and call this an early one. Mom's in town. I'm pretty sure Mom wants to go eat at the Mexican restaurant tonight. Right, Mom? Sure. She says sure. So unless you guys can type a question within the next 10 seconds, I'm going to end this broadcast, and then I'm going to hop in the truck, and I'm going to go get me some Mexican food. Okay? All righty. So everybody, remember the Monday show is actually going to be published tomorrow, and then we got another one coming out next Monday. So I appreciate each and every one of you who would participate in these sessions and stuff and answer us questions. And do me a favor, everybody's listening or watching this video. Pick one person from your circle of friends who you think might benefit from this video or might benefit from my podcast. And just say, hey, do you listen to Chuck at letstalkcabling.com? And if not, why not? So don't yell at her. I wouldn't yell at my mom. She'd beat me up. So, yeah. All right, everybody. Until next time, be safe.